Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Beyond the Uniform with the LT's daughter. I've got another amazing guest here today. She is a law enforcement spouse, and she just came out with a book, Silent Warriors, The Guardian Behind the Badge. Toni, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, I'm very excited. This is another first time podcast interview. I've had several folks on I've never so hear a little bit about your journey and your background being married to a police officer. Were you and your husband together when he joined the academy?
Yes, we were.
Okay, so what did that
Um,
kind of journey look like?
um, that was a roller coaster. He actually went into the academy, signed up to do the academy without even consulting with me.
Nice.
So he was a EMT prior. So he did
Okay.
the 911 circuit in a really busy community here in Colorado. And then he went to the jail to do EMT work there.
Oof.
Yeah. And so he was doing that and then came home one day and was like, "So, I'm going to the academy. I'm gonna be a police officer instead." So I was
Oh,
like, I
wow.
didn't really understand what we were getting into. I was like, okay, whatever. And I mean,
Right.
it is very different than EMT work, but the shift work and the traumas were all still there too. So, I worked full time at the time. When he went into the academy, I had just delivered our second. And so we had two little kids, and I was like, well, if you're going to the academy, I'm quitting my job. I'm just going to be a full-time stay-at-home mom because I can't do your schedule with two kids and shift work. It was already hard enough with one. Um, yeah, so he went into that in what year was that? 2013. And so he's been doing that since.
And how long had you guys been together slash married by that point?
Um, we have been together for 15 years. So at that point, what was that? Four,
Hmm.
almost 4 years. Had been together before he went into police work.
Okay. So you guys had like you knew each other. You were like in
Yes.
a good situation, a good place. So when he joined the academy, I mean, you said he was an EMT, he worked in the jail, so he had like you guys had familiarity with
hmm
elements to first responder life. But when he joined the academy, what are some things that kind of stood out to you as like, oh no, this is kind of different?
I don't think I really grasped it until the very end of the academy. When we did like a family night with a local psychologist department that they work with,
Mhm.
and they were explaining all these different things we would start to kind of notice about our officers. And I was like, what? No. And then I started noticing them, and it was like the subtle things, right? Like his back is never to a door in a restaurant. I always have to walk on his left side. Like it's like all these little tiny things that I was like, what is happening? But it was part of his training, right? Like his gun is on his right, so I'm not standing on that side. He's got to be able to
Oh.
see what's happening in a restaurant, see the exit. It was like subtle things that they weren't bad. It was just
Mm.
like these little things I started to kind of notice. And then I think as the years have gone on and the traumas have happened, there's bigger things now that
Yeah.
like even when he was an EMT, like he would have some really serious calls and he would come home and he would sleep and he would have horrible nightmares from the scene he just walked away from. But now like they're different things, right? Like we've got injuries related to the job. We've got traumas related to the job. so you can see some of those things kind of creep in more
Mm.
than I did. I mean,
When
when he
he
was an
was,
EMT, but that was also a long time ago. Who knows had he stayed as an EMT if I would have seen some of those similar things. I don't know,
yeah.
but
I think, especially, I mean, I actually don't know any EMTs, but my imagination, just from like what I know being on the outskirts, is like the stuff that they have to do and experience is just crazy to me. I mean, I don't understand first responders to begin with
right.
because, like I always say, my background is fashion. Like I can't do it.
Right.
But when it comes to the EMTs, like I really do feel for those people because, I mean, it's just they're working on them, they're losing them, they're in the ambulance with them. It's just like so
Hmm.
much I can't even like understand. But I do think kind of the big sort of difference that stands out to me is just like the I don't know what word to I keep wanting to use the word like combative because it's like cops have to be more combative than
Hmm.
an EMT, and with that comes like a whole nother slew of problems,
Right.
obstacles.
Well, and when you look at like first responders in general, but then you look at firefighters and EMTs, they're often more seen as the heroes and they're
Yeah.
praised versus law enforcement is very
Hmm.
opposite of that. They are public
Yes.
enemy number one until you need them, and then they will
Hmm.
be your hero for 5 seconds, and then you'll go back to hating them. You know, like,
Yep.
and so I think there's with that comes that combative piece, right? And they like on top of what they have to deal with and who how they're dealing with people, plus just this, they're always on guard,
Hmm.
you
Yeah,
know.
and I mean, they've got all the first responder things, and I've always been, since I started like this whole platform, I've always been very specific. Like the things I do, the things I talk about can and will lump in all first responders, and
Hmm.
I'm sure that they can resonate and relate to a lot of the things that I talk about and the people I share on my podcast talk about. But I am very specific about the fact that I am speaking to law enforcement because,
Hmm.
especially when it comes to the kids, which we're going to talk about more later, law enforcement has their own like column within first responding, as far as I'm concerned, because
Hmm.
they really do. I mean, even if you take the hero piece out of it, law enforcement, like their job requires weapons. They they have to enforce the law. They have to be the first responder and also the person who like makes everything, stay
Hmm.
civil, makes everything enforces the law like at the same
Right.
time. And I
Well,
think that that is just it brings in a whole nother layer.
yeah, I mean, it's that balance too, like for them, right? Like sometimes they're showing up and they're saving that life, and sometimes they have to take the life. Like
Yep.
it's like a firefighter doesn't have to choose one or the other based on the threat. Like they're
Mhm.
just showing up and trying to save the life, you
Right.
know?
And
And
they might not, and like they may not be
mhm,
successful in their attempt, but that is different
right.
than
Then having to
actually
pull the
take it.
trigger.
Yeah,
Hmm.
exactly. And I think especially just when it comes to the kids, since that is, what my platform is built around, something like as simple as the fact that kids have to understand the duty belt, I think is so unique, but then also like more specific to today's environment than when I grew up is the way the media
Hmm.
portrays police and the way their classmates might perceive the police. And
Hmm.
there's just a whole nother again, it's just adding in additional elements that, and I'm not saying like, woe is law enforcement or they've got all these obstacles they have to deal with and like screw the other guys, but like just I've been challenged on the idea that I don't speak to all first responders everywhere
Right.
of every walk of life. But I mean, that's by design. That's very intentional. I mean,
Well, and
part
I
of it is
think,
because it's all I know.
right. Well, and I think that that's the difference, right? Is like, sure, even like when I speak with people, the work I'm doing, the book, like could be like picked up
Yeah.
by a first responder, read, and will
Hmm.
hit elements. But I can't write from their perspective because I
Hmm.
only know a law enforcement perspective,
Right.
really. Sure, we did EMT for a few years at the beginning, but that was a whole lifetime ago. Like
Right.
I don't really remember those days, and so but there is so much of that, and with kids, like it makes me sad that my kids have to be mindful of who they share what they're like with, like what their dad does for work. Like
Hmm.
sometimes they just don't even tell people, or like after like 2020 riots and they would walk into the school building and Black Lives Matter flags are flying and hanging in the halls and kids are talking about how awful police are and that's what their dad does. And their dad was in the riots, like getting fireworks launched at him, Molotov cocktail, all of that. And so to them, like they're told that their dad's life doesn't matter and he's the enemy when that's so far from the truth, you
Hmm.
know? And so I think that that's the big difference, too. And when you're talking about those specific things, like a firefighter family, those kids will proudly tell the world what their dad does, you know?
Hmm.
And it's not the case with law
Yeah.
enforcement kids.
Yeah. And I mean, like when you really get down to it, everything I talk about is pretty much just like anyone can find a piece of their
Hmm.
story in what I share about.
Right.
I mean, I did a presentation a few months ago to a room of civilians, actually. They were mental health professionals. And I think there were like a handful of people who had a hand in law enforcement in some capacity. And uh, like 90% of the people came up to me afterwards to tell me how, even though they don't have law enforcement in their family, it still resonated. Like
Hmm.
the one that stands out the most is a woman who actually worked at the facility and she was just like listening in, I guess. Her dad was an emergency room doctor and
Hmm.
he would be gone a lot. He would leave a lot. He would like there were times where he would come home covered in blood and like again, I do not know any emergency room doctors, but like at the end of the day, what I'm sharing about, anyone can kind of pull
Right.
from it because it all really does come down to just like empathy, wanting better for our people, wanting to love better on our people, do better by our people, specifically our kids.
Hmm.
But I want to go back to what you said about the riots because it's interesting you brought that up. Um, I resonate a lot with what your kids went through, but from obviously a very different perspective. I'm a grown adult. I don't really care, what people think of me. I don't care what people think of my dad, but and like I don't have to go to school and deal with bullies. But during that time, I was in New York, and I share about this sometimes. I actually was just talking to someone about this when I first started putting together like keynotes and speeches and presentations and trainings and stuff. The person that I worked with told me to remove this part of my story as to not offend people. And she was wonderful. She
Hmm.
did a great job. She helped me a lot, but at the same time, that really irked me because it is why I'm here today, why I'm
Hmm.
doing this. And all that to say, I was living in New York City during the riots, and my friends were participating in them. My friends were posting everything you can imagine on social media. They were reaching out to me about, the police, what the police were doing during the riots, what they were not acting like, sending me videos, sending me photos, sending me like other people's posts, like all of this stuff, just questioning me, questioning, my
Hmm.
loyalties, questioning my dad who's been retired for 15 years. Like it was just so bizarre and such a slap in the face. Um, but that's what really kind of made me realize at 30 some odd years old, like shit's different. Like this
Hmm.
is not what people have different views than me. Like and I
Hmm.
wasn't super like police are the best. Like I am no, I'm not like a thin blue line girly,
Right.
but I respect them. And like these people are coming out of the woodworks. And I'm like, holy cow, if you didn't grow
Right.
up the way I grew up, you don't get it.
Right. Well, and like that's the thing is like even those of us within this community, right? Like we know, like my husband and I will see things, we'll see officer involved shootings or whatever, and we'll think and walk through that and be like, okay, like that was over the top. That violates trainings. Like we're not opposed to admitting that there are bad
Yep.
apples in there, but that's the case in every profession, you know. But those are few and far between, and it really sucks that the two percenters make up the whole media persona of the 98% of officers who are really good, who actually just go out to serve and protect,
Right.
you
Right.
know, and who sacrifice so much that is unseen and unacknowledged.
Yeah. And the one video that a friend of mine had sent me was the officer was telling them to go home because they were out past curfew. And by telling, I mean he was yelling at them because they were yelling at him. And
Hmm.
he was like, he sends me this video in the middle of the night and he's like, I forget what exactly he said, but it was basically like, why is he acting like this? Why is he talking to us like this? And all I could do was, I mean, I don't even remember if I answered, but in my mind, I was like, because you're breaking the rules right now, like you're out past curfew. And honestly, he's probably been working for 72 hours and would do anything to go home.
Hmm.
And he
Right.
can't.
And they
And
don't know
you
the
are refusing to
trauma.
go home.
Yeah, or the traumas he's endured that day. Like, you don't know how many times he's been spit at,
Hmm.
like threatened, name called, had stuff launched at him. Like, you have no idea what he's walked through all
Yeah.
day long and all week long. And yet you're mad that he's yelling at you to go home because you're choosing to break the law. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, so that's really what made me kind of realize like, okay, I have a different perspective here that other
Hmm.
people just don't have. Did your kids like did they come home and ask you about it? Were they prepared for it? Like I certainly was not at 30 some odd years old. Did not know that police were also called pigs. Knew no clue. No clue. ACAB, never heard of him. Like I was so blindsided.
Right. And I think that that's like a little bit of a difference with the younger kids
Yeah.
now,
Hmm.
depending on the conversations you have in your home, I guess.
Hmm.
Like we're a very open family. We have all the conversations. Nothing is off the table.
Which I love.
Obviously, they will be at age appropriate levels.
Right.
I'm all about the asking questions to kind of gauge where they're at, what they understand, what
Hmm.
they know, and piecing it from there. And when I give an answer, it's an answer that can't be, they can't draw more from it.
Hmm.
It's
Hmm.
very short to the point answer that doesn't leave room for questioning. Just because I do have one kid who's very much me and will ask 1,000 more questions.
Oh, that's like me.
And he wants all the information, but he's also only 11. So
Mhm.
there's a little bit of a fine line, right? So they knew what was, they didn't know the full extent of what was happening, but they knew that dad was gone for a week. And they knew that there were riots and they knew that people didn't like the police officers right now. Um, so they were prepared to an extent, but like they still didn't. We homeschool, but after like that year, we had decided to put them in a traditional school. which I was like,
Oh,
well, that
no.
was the wrong year to put them in traditional school.
Timing.
But it was like we would have conversations, but they also just one kid did the middle kid didn't last long in public school. He was like by like 2 months, he was like, yeah, I'm done. Like, take me out. And I was like, okay. Like, if you're not thriving there, then we're not gonna do that, right?
Right.
Like, my whole point is I want you to love learning. And if you're
Hmm.
not loving it, then that's clearly not working for you. Um, the oldest made it all the way through the year, and then she was like, please don't do that again. But like it was really hard, and she was like, I don't tell anybody what my dad does for work. And like some of her friends were people who were like coming from all walks of life. Everybody looked different, were different. Like nobody was exactly the same, right? And so she was like, they all just keep talking about how much they don't like police officers, and I just don't tell them what my dad does for work. And I was like, that's fine. I mean, it's really sad.
Hmm.
She had some tears and a lot of conversations about not understanding why people wouldn't like her dad. Like, she was like, he's a good guy. He's nice. Like, he helps people. Like, my kids, when they view police officers, they view them as helpers, right? Like, they're
Yeah.
not bad guys.
Hmm.
And so, because like you, they have very different experiences.
Hmm.
Like, they watch their dad. Like, and we make it a point, like, if he's getting an award for a life-saving award, for example, like, the kids will be there to watch him get that award because I want them to also see, like, their sacrifice for dad going to work. Like, this is the outcome of that. Like, somebody's
Hmm.
life was saved. It's not this negative thing. Um, and so they view dad as a helper. We don't
Yeah.
use the word hero. Like, dad
Right.
doesn't like that, and it's too much pressure. And
Fair.
he's like, I'm not a hero. Like, and he doesn't even want to go to those awards. I'm like, it's not really for you, anyways. Like, that's for us, but they get to celebrate. Like, dad saved somebody's life. That's really cool,
Hmm.
And like, our oldest, like, she wants to do something within law enforcement. Right now, she's aiming for forensic pathology, but she was like, but
Oh,
if I decide I don't want to do that, I'll be a police officer. Like,
good for
that's a
her.
job that actually helps people,
Yeah. How
which
old is she?
she's almost 15.
Okay.
Um, so yeah, like, that's just their view of dad is he's a helper.
Yeah.
And
And
so,
well, so like, would they come home and be like, oh my God, can you believe that this is what happened at school? Or would they internalize? Or would they be upset? Or did they just like brush it off?
I think it was a mix of all of that. Our oldest
Right.
is very communicative and shares all the things, which I love. I never have to worry about where she's at, what she's
I love that.
doing, like, and it builds that trust, right? Like, she can go to the mall with her friends and I don't have to be there because I fully
Hmm.
trust my kid. Um, and so she would voice like, "Oh my gosh, this is like what people were saying today," or I don't understand that, or this is really frustrating, But I think that there were probably moments when she probably internalized some of that too.
Hmm.
Um, the middle one probably internalized more. He's not super communicative,
Maybe it's a middle child thing.
yeah, especially with his emotions. So that's the work we're doing with him. But um, he would like throw the most epic tantrums to go to school. And like
Mm.
I reached out to his teacher and I'm like, is he struggling with something or like what is happening at school? Is this like an issue that we can solve before we just pull him out of school?
Right.
He was like, he is thriving in class. Like he is the first to raise his hand. He has the answers. Like he does not have any behavior issues. And so then I was like, okay, like, what is it then? I still don't know, other than he does get overstimulated in larger crowds by nature. And so my guess is he was feeling pretty overstimulated. And so it was taking a lot for him to get out the door. But I also like can't imagine it was very helpful when he would go to school and he'd be hearing people talk about how much they don't like his dad.
Yeah.
Not his dad per se, but
But I mean, his dad, because apparently they're all just one person and like they
yeah.
all just
Well, and when he would
symbolize the
walk
same
in,
guy.
and when he'd walk in and the like Black Lives Matter flag is hanging right there when he walks in the door, like that's the first thing he's seeing when he walks in a school building.
Hmm.
Um, and so he's like, and he knew a little bit to know what that represented,
Right.
what was happening, what was pulling dad away. Um, but not a ton of information because he was a lot younger then, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. Almost 6 years ago at this point.
Yeah, like he was almost like he was 6 when that was happening. So, of course, his full perspective of that was not the same as his older sister.
Right. And how did you and your husband navigate that time, just in general? Like I mentioned, they were
Oof.
working forever. They were working like weeks long. I know that
Uh-huh.
sometimes they were like sleeping at the stations. What was that kind of like for you guys?
Oh, it was
Ugh.
so hard. It was a really hard week.
Do you think it was
Like,
the hardest up until that point in his career?
oh, absolutely.
Okay.
And like he had been on SWAT, he's been on SWAT call outs, like he's been on SWAT call outs since then, like major call outs. That one was the hardest. And I think it was because it was like a week straight. Like he would maybe come home and sleep for a few hours and then he was back to work. And I did not sleep at all. I remember at one point they had live streams for like Denver, which is where he got called because that's the closest major city.
Yeah.
And he got called like they had the live streams and so I would put them on.
Oh no. You don't watch that.
Well, yes, this I now know. Don't do
And you don't read
that.
the comments.
No. And so, but I couldn't sleep and I hadn't heard from him.
Can relate.
And like, I'm not usually one to worry. Like, and
Hmm.
when he goes on a SWAT call, I'm like, bye, love you. See you when I see you. Like,
Hmm.
I trust his training and he's really good about like when he has a moment, he will send a quick update. Like, all good or love you or
Hmm. Just like a
still here.
check-in.
Yeah,
Right.
something super
Still
short,
kicking.
but I know he's alive, right?
Yeah.
And so there was, I don't know, it might have been like a t night 2, night 3, when I finally was like, I'm not sleeping. This sucks. Like not only am I not sleeping, I am solo parenting in the thick of like, but also trying to help the kids understand where dad
Hmm.
is, but at an age appropriate level.
Hmm.
And managing those emotions on top of my emotions. Um, my husband didn't have too many emotions that he was like showing yet, but I also
Yeah.
think that he was just in the thick of survival mode, so he wasn't really feeling
Right.
anything. And so I think that didn't help either. And by like night 3, he was like, please stop watching the live feed. And I was like, but I don't know what's happening. And he was like, that if something goes down, that is not how I would like you to find out. So go ahead and turn that off. And I
Yeah.
was like, okay. And so I did, and I didn't pick it up again. And now, even to this day, like, I mean, we don't watch news in our house anyways,
Hmm.
but I don't put on the news. I don't get on social media. And like during that week, I stayed off social media,
Bless. I should have done the same.
didn't watch news. I did watch the live stream for like 2 nights, and then I was like, okay, we're done with that.
Yeah, no, we're done with that. No news is good news as far as we're
Yes.
concerned right now.
Um,
I do want to ask you a quick question. You mentioned when he was in the academy, they had like a family day for you guys, which I think is
Hmm.
getting more and more common and more popular. And they gave you like traits to essentially be on the lookout for, you had said.
Hmm.
Did they also give you tools or resources or suggestions on what to do with those traits?
No.
So it's
It
like your
was just,
husband has
yeah.
to face the door and like, good luck. That's it.
Yeah, pretty much. It was like, and that may be different now. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't
But
know. Maybe. I don't think so.
that might have been a little bit newer. I don't know. But yeah, it was basically like, here's what to expect, just so you know, kind of thing. Like, here's
Oh,
the
so
heads
it's like
up.
this is the way it's gonna be.
Yeah, heads up. And they had said, like, make sure you remind. Like, I think, like, what the only piece of advice I got was, like, reminding him of who he was prior to becoming a police officer. Um,
Which is
and
valid, but
so,
like, how do I do that?
right. And like I made like for his graduation gift, I was like, I could buy you all kinds of things, not going to. Like you buy what you want to buy. I had everybody in his life who knew him prior to being a police officer write him a letter about who
Oh, I
he
love
was
that.
and put it in a scrapbook with some pictures and letters specifically to him that he can like pick up and read when he's forgetting who he is at his core.
Aw.
Because to me, I was like, well, if I have to remind you of who you are before you were a police officer, it's going to be mean a whole lot more if you have these people who have known you, some longer than I've known you, you know, some, and it was all people outside of police world. So all
Yeah.
of those were who he was before he became a cop. And so nothing in there was from people in his life now.
Yes, I love that. That's so cool. That was so creative. And I think if anyone listening is dating someone or their significant other is joining the academy, take notes because that was pretty genius.
Yeah, I just wanted to like, it's this simple reminder, right? And it means
Hmm.
more than just coming from me, and
Yeah.
it's easy for me to forget who he was 15
Hmm.
years ago to who he is today, and some of that is because we have both grown up, right? Like,
Right.
and have walked through traumas and stress and parenting and all the things that have molded and shaped us into who we are today. But the core of who he is
Hmm.
still there.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. And remembering that is crucial. And I think, I had mentioned before we hit record, like that community piece, I think is super important because the non-law enforcement relationships are so grounding
mhm,
and so they really are embodiments and reminders of who you are at your core, who you were when you were 5, 10, 20 years old before you not only just got into this job, but also became an adult and became sort of,
mhm,
hardened by the world in any capacity. And I think it's easy for people to discount the non-law enforcement people in their lives or even um, not leave them behind. But I think sometimes those relationships can kind of wear away or start to fade into the background a little bit because
mhm.
the non-law enforcement people obviously don't always have they don't have firsthand knowledge. They don't necessarily understand
Right.
firsthand. But I think, and I talked about this with someone episodes back named Kristen, it really all comes down to like whether or not they're a good friend, whether or not they're a
Right.
good person who is willing to listen to shit that they don't understand or be patient if you have to cancel or, show up with your kids at the last minute or like whatever stuff happens. But what has your experience kind of been like? Because I know you mentioned you were kind of flip-flopped. You were like all about the
Hmm.
non-law enforcement friendships and community, and then you started to find your law enforcement community. So what has that journey kind of been like for you?
Yeah, I think I was very anti like law enforcement community. I think because there was this piece of me that was like, keeping his job separate from our personal life,
Hmm.
right? And I think I fought against it quite a bit too, of like, but why do I need to be friends with police wives?
Hmm.
Like my friend whose husband works at Lowe's, like she doesn't have to be friends with her husband's
Right.
spouses.
Hmm.
Like why why do I have to be? And um it I think, and I also didn't want that to be my identity. So, like, I'm not thin blue line. We don't, and my husband is very much against that too. Like, we don't have things on our car. We don't wear the
Hmm.
clothes. He's like, that's like putting a target on your back. So let's not do
That's so
that.
funny. My dad always said the same thing. Like there
Yeah.
was a time when I was young. Sorry, I just have to tell
No, you're
this
fine.
because you just reminded me of it and I forgot all about it. There was a time when I was young and I there w it must have been like '08-ish. And I think that there was like civil unrest at that time. Like this is how disconnected I am. Like I don't know. I have no clue. But it was a time where people were very anti-police. I
Hmm.
didn't realize that. But people who were pro-police or police families were putting blue lights on their front porch here in the Philadelphia area. And the idea was like, show that you support the police, show that this is a safe house for them or whatever. And my dad was always like, nope, absolutely not. Like, one,
Hmm.
no, that's kind of silly. No offense. Two, I mean, what are we going to do? Advertise that we're a police family? No, we go out of our way to, like, we don't put our name in the phone book. Like, we don't put
Right.
our names on your, backpack on your car. Like, we go out of our way to not put this target on our back. So why would we put a big blue shining
Target.
star
Right.
saying, like, hey, come here. There's a cop
Right.
here.
It's so
And
true.
that just reminded me of that. So I apologize
Yeah.
to cut you
No, you're
off, but
fine. Yeah, so we're just not that family, like, which is fine. Like it's if people want to be like that, that's totally their right to
right,
do
of
that and
course.
they can be proud in that way and I'm just proud in a different way.
Hmm.
And so I had a really hard time. I'm also an introvert and I am one of my strengths is being a relator. And so with that, I'm really intentional with my relationships. And so I put a lot of effort into those relationships I do have. And so I already had a network of people. So I was like, I'm not expanding that at all. I'm not interested. Um, and so I just I would like know a few of them from
Hmm.
like a SWAT barbecue or
Right.
because they're my husband's really good friends and so by default I would know their spouse's name and maybe have said hi but they weren't in my phone and I wasn't calling them to hang out. And then I think come January of 24 really like even so like the fall of 2023 we were going through some really heavy critical incidents and
Mhm.
calls. And I think there was this piece of me that was like, I really want somebody who also understands what I'm walking through without having to explain.
Right.
Like there's just that difference, right? This common, like, I don't even have to tell you what's going on. I can just be in your presence and you'll just know.
Hmm.
Shift work is hard. Critical incidents are hard. Officer involved shootings are hard. Injuries are hard. Being a mom who solo parents most of the time is hard. Like, and so, but then I think after January of 24, when my husband was involved in his shooting, it was the most alone I'd felt in the police world. I had an amazing tribe, like, still do. Like, I've got three really good friends who in those moments were there, right?
Hmm.
Staying up, calling, reaching out, dropping food at the door, offering to take my kids, all the things, bringing fresh flowers, anything that they knew would
That's so
just kind
nice.
of help a little bit in the ways that they could. They were like, I can't understand. I have no idea what you're walking through, but I can show up. I'm like,
Hmm.
thank you. Thank you. Just the fact that you're showing up without me having to even ask for what I need is like that to me is how I know that you're the right person in my tribe.
Yeah.
Um, and so, but after that, I was like, I need a spouse or two in my life who understand the depth of what we walk through too. Um, and so I think I've shifted a little bit. I think I shifted in the sense of like my core is still very much non-police, but having start like I'm starting to build a community around me within the police world that is beneficial. And I think after the last shooting in my husband's department in the summer, I think it was like June, I got called to come be peer support for the spouses. And sitting with them and hearing their perspective now on the other side of like, I got through that because I had you, because I had somebody who understood what I was walking through, made all the difference. And so I think I'm starting to really see the benefit of both sides of
Yeah.
that.
And I think especially when you start dealing with some of the um like beyond the day to day, like when you
Hmm.
start dealing with the shootings and the critical incidents and things like that, that's when it's almost like you need that toolkit or like that hotline, so to speak,
Hmm.
of people who like again, it's beyond the day to day. It's
Right.
more, it's next level. We need a little bit more support here. We need a little bit more insight into what we're going through
Hmm.
and like someone who can understand it if I talk about it or don't want to talk about it or don't understand what I'm going through or whatever it is.
Hmm.
And I think it's cool too that you are kind of that person because one, you kind of, you know, like flopped about it, and learned it the hard way on your
Yes.
own. Um, and now you can kind of save other people from going through what you went through. But at the same time, I think you specifically are a really good resource because you have that balanced mindset and that sort of um like the value of, the non-law enforcement community. We still want to,
Hmm.
exist in that world. We are still people at the end of the
Right.
day. Our spouses are still people at the end of the day, but also like there is a need for people who
Hmm.
understand it too
Well, I
and
think,
do that.
yeah, I think there's that balance, right? Because I think if I only surrounded myself with law enforcement people,
Hmm.
that becomes the identity and our
Right.
like that just consumes our lives. Like where's the separation then?
Exactly.
Same with my husband. Like he's got his core group at work, like those are his people and I'm so thankful he is the person who has surrounded himself with good, strong people where they can like joke around with each other, give each other a hard time, and then in the same breath be like, okay, real talk, how are you?
Right.
Like that's their little like saying, real
Good
talk,
for them.
like where are you at? How did that call
Hmm.
hit you? How did that court hearing hit you? Like they're grounded in like that piece, but then he also has his people outside of law enforcement. I will say that circle has shrunk quite a bit since becoming a police officer. And I think the hard part with that is like their schedules are so not normal. Like my
Hmm.
husband works weekend graves right now.
Hmm.
So when his civilian friends are home for the weekend, he's sleeping slash working.
Right.
So it really hard for them to find time to connect. It takes a lot more intentionality versus when he's on the same shift with his buddies, like they can hang out, they can talk, they can do whatever.
Hmm.
Um, but there is that it's a balance, right? And it's good for my husband to be able to call his non-police friend and be like, "Okay, I'm really struggling with this piece. Can you give
Hmm.
me some perspective there?" Whether it's work related or not,
Yeah.
and I think we miss the point too when we only focus on having only law enforcement in our community. Like my friends don't walk my lifestyle. Like they don't, and there's certain parts they're just not going to be able to understand. But at the end of the day, they're humans who live in a very broken world who have experienced their own hardships and traumas. And they're mothers and parent and understand when a kid is sick and in a hospital that it doesn't matter what their husbands do for a profession. Like they're just going
Hmm.
to understand that piece. And so I think it's more about being intentional with who we put in our circle
Exactly.
versus what profession. But I do,
Yeah.
like you said, there is that need when the criticals hit that you have somebody sitting on the other side of you who understands. Like the night of my husband's shooting, I walked in and met a million people at the PD. Like it was all hands on deck. I couldn't tell you half of their names, and not a single one of them understood the road that I was walking through.
Hmm.
Like, and I specifically had said, has your husband been involved in a shooting? Or because some of them, like, they work there and their husbands are officers.
Okay.
And so, but they do like administrative or they're
Right.
dispatchers. And so I'm like, do you understand this? Nope, sorry. And so for me, it was that moment of like, okay, well, this has to shift and change. Like, and I do think that I've shifted and I want to shift and change the narrative around supporting the spouses because I think that that gets forgotten. Like that night, my husband had a million peer support people on staff and then one who was designated to him. And there isn't that for the spouse. And
Right.
so I was left to navigate this whole new world. Like our lives forever changed that night in good and bad ways, right? And so I was left to navigate that and hold my own emotions, my own questions, his emotions, our kids' emotions, and try to navigate how does this work now? And are there things that we need to do to protect ourselves? Like, what is media going to look like? I had to be on top of it, explain to our families, like, you're going to see this on the media, the news.
Hmm.
Please refrain from commenting. Like, all the things that I was like, nobody prepares you for that, you
Yeah.
know? And so,
Yeah. And I do want to put a pin in that because I have, when we talk about your book in a few minutes here, I want to talk about that, like the logistic piece of it.
mhm,
Um, but I'm curious, like, because I don't know. My husband has it's not a cop, so I'm curious, like, what if someone were to approach you at the police station, they are admin and their husband works there, and they're like, I'm here for you, whatever you need, whatever. What is missing from that person and what they have to offer that someone who has been through a shooting has to offer? Is it genuinely just like a mindset thing that they understand that nobody else does? Or like, I'm just curious from a very like micro level as someone who
mhm.
is on the outside, what that kind of is like.
I think it's just that understanding piece, right? Like, I don't necessarily then have to sit and explain to you a feeling I have
Yeah.
because you're just gonna probably already understand that feeling. Um, and I think there's specific things that happen after, or emotions that come up, or fears. Like I sat with one of the spouses and she was like, I know I'll be fine. You made it through, I'll make it through. But like, I'm terrified for when he goes back to work. Nothing will ever be the same. Like, that innocence is gone.
Hmm.
And like, it's an innocence in like the sense, like, we know what we like. I hate the saying, you know what you signed up for, but like, we understand the
Yeah.
elements, right? We
Mhm.
understand that like that might be the case. Like that's what they train for in
Hmm.
hopes that they never have to use it. But it's
Right.
like I think about it when I was like lifeguard pool manager, right? Like I trained for having to do CPR
Hmm.
in hopes that I never had to use
Yeah.
CPR. And I
Yeah.
never thankfully did, but like it's the same kind of concept.
Hmm.
But I think, and like I looked at her and I told her, like, that's like we get through it because we trust their training, right? And because we know that like they did everything they needed to do to come home
Mhm.
and to save the people around them. And so we get to lean into that. But I think it had somebody who's never walked through that told me to like, well, just trust his training, I'd been like, mm, a lot easier said than done when you're on the other side and now that innocence piece is gone.
Right, right.
Like there was a grief, right? There was a lot of grieving in that season post shooting that like I didn't even anticipate.
Mhm.
And so I think having somebody who walked through that, there's that piece of just mutual understanding.
It's like solidarity.
Yeah, like I don't have to explain it. You just know. And you're not, there's no judgment. Like, and you can validate the emotions that I'm feeling in a way that I think if you haven't, you can't
Mhm.
fully do. I think that as humans, like we can empathize and have a
Yeah.
level of understanding logically, but it's a whole different story when you've walked through that.
Yeah, that makes sense. And who helped you guys like navigate talking to your kids about it?
Um, ourselves.
So you just kind of
We
figured it
did
out.
the day after we did meet with one of the therapists for first responders and kind of
And did
asked,
his
but
department like hook that up? Okay.
yeah, but I didn't like any of her suggestions. So I was
But
like,
I
yeah,
love that.
we'll do everything opposite of what she just said.
But I
And
love that
I
because that's
think,
trusting your intuition.
mhm.
You're their
And
mom.
right. And I think that that's the piece. Like, it's gonna be different for every family and every kid and every age, right? Like, and I think it comes to down to us knowing our kids and what how our family operates. We're
Mhm.
already a very open family. Nothing is off the table. And so if they have a question, they will ask it. Sometimes we have to say, you don't get to know the answer to that question, or you know everything you need to know, and we're going to let that be now. Because we do want to protect their little brains too and
Mhm.
their hearts. Like they're still little.
Yeah.
Um, like our youngest has no idea that dad was in a shooting and
Mhm.
probably won't know for many years to come because why? Like he
Right.
couldn't comprehend that. He was just stoked that like dad was able to take him to preschool every day and pick him up and dad was home.
Yeah, definitely want to
Like,
protect that little innocence.
yeah, like he doesn't need to know, like, oh, well, your dad is home because he
Yeah,
had to
your
use
dad
his
took you to
weapon.
preschool because
Right.
that's
And
what you were
so
excited about, kid. Like,
yeah, and I think that there's beauty in that piece,
yeah,
right? Um, the therapist we had talked to basically was like, don't tell them anything. And I was like, yeah, that doesn't work for me. So we're gonna not do that.
yeah.
And I know my kids, and like our oldest was awake when I left that night. And I
Mhm.
had told, like, I was calm, I didn't have tears yet, like, nothing had really, I was just processing and
Mhm.
adapting. But I had called my father-in-law and said, hey, could you come to the house? I have to go to the PD. And he was like, I'm on my way. And I was like, thank you. Um, and then I went up and just let her know, like, hey, I'm leaving. Grandpa's coming. So if you hear his voice downstairs or a man's voice, don't freak out. And if the dog goes crazy, because it was like almost, I think it was like 10 o'clock, 10:30 when I left.
Mhm.
And so she was like, okay, everything okay? And I was like, it will be, but I have to go. And she was like, okay, well, I hope everybody's okay. But then, like, the next days, and like when I interviewed her for the book, and like, when I was doing their parts, like, I wanted a little piece from them
Mhm.
and their perspective, but I had a couple of specific questions. But one of the big ones was, what did we do that we could have done? Like, what didn't we do that we could have done better with? Because I think that that is how we do it better the next time
Yeah,
for
100%.
anything, whether
Mhm.
it's a critical, a shooting, whatever. How do we do this better next time?
Mhm.
And she was like, I wish you would have given me just a little bit that night because I would have slept better.
Hmm.
I would have been able to go to sleep because I we didn't get home until like 3 a.m. So, and then the next day it was just weird in our house. And the kids are like, why is dad sleeping? And why
Right.
is dad's truck not here? And all the things,
A
right?
lot of
But
confusion.
yeah, but I think it was us knowing our kids, and we knew the older one could understand more, and she can like she is very mature and can handle a deeper conversation.
Hmm.
We also know like she has a phone, so she doesn't have social media, but she could have access to the news. And she has friends who do have access to social media.
Right.
And so it was framing it, and we framed everything around gratitude, like as the front when we talked with them, like we're grateful dad is home
Hmm.
and that everybody is safe. And he did have to use his training. And in the process, somebody did lose their life. And um, like, but when you have specific questions, the person to ask is the man who was there because nobody else besides dad and the suspect know what went down
Right.
in reality. And so if you have a very specific question, he is the one you talk to. Do not go researching, don't ask your friends,
Hmm.
don't search the news and social media because none of those are going to be accurate.
Yeah.
And so yeah. And then the middle one, it was just like some of those subtle conversations that eventually like he backed me into a corner eventually with his questioning to the point that I was like, all right, it's time. I'm
You're
just
not
gonna,
getting out of this, mom.
yep, I'm gonna just tell you at an age appropriate level what happened. But he had equated it to the last time he remembers dad running out like going out the door, even though his dad was already at work when this happened, but he was equating it to the Boulder King Super shooting. And that was the first time that he understood what dad does for work, and it like
Mhm.
terrified him for months. And
Yeah.
we had lots of sleepless nights. And it was only because ran next door and the neighbors had the news on because he was playing and he saw it and was like, I know where my dad went. I'm like, great. I don't
Yeah.
even know where your dad went.
Yeah.
But I think, yeah, it was just framing conversations around them and knowing where each kid was and knowing them so intimately and personally that we know what they can and can't handle.
Yeah.
And I
I
think
think,
that that's the case across the board. Like, I don't think there's a one size fits all. I
right.
don't think you could create a handbook that says, here's how to have that conversation because not every teenage kid is going to be in the same place my teenage kid is in,
Hmm.
and vice versa. So, yeah.
But I think it's interesting that the therapist had said not to say anything because I
Hmm.
can't imagine that being that ever being the answer.
Right.
Really. I mean, I can see not wanting to say anything for sure and like wanting to protect them from that. But I mean, to your point, like they can, I mean, they don't live in their bedroom. Like they go out
Right.
into the world. And if
Hmm.
you're not at least, doing your best or trying in some capacity to start the conversations, like they're gonna have the conversation somewhere else.
Hmm. Yeah, and that's like for us, that was especially with our oldest, right? Like, we don't want you seeking this conversation out elsewhere and
Hmm.
information elsewhere because we want you to have the accurate information,
Right.
which is what your dad can give you. So if there's like questions that pop up, like this isn't a one-time conversation. Ask away. When a question comes up, ask. If we can give you the answer, we'll give it to you. If we can't, we'll explain that we can't. And with that, like our kids also, like we've built that layer of trust, right? So if we say, you know everything you need to know, or you don't need to know
Yeah.
the answer to that question, they know it's because we love them and we're protecting them in the way we know how. And so they trust that and they don't push, they're not seeking the answers elsewhere. They're just like, okay.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that's really important too, is just to be able to build that trust and that openness. I mean, to a degree, but I think that's really, kind of what it's all about. Because that's what makes them feel safe. They can be okay not knowing everything they want to know
Hmm.
because they understand that mom and dad like truly do know best and truly are, protecting them, and they
Hmm.
can trust that. I think that's like just a huge piece of the sort of the puzzle. And
Yeah.
does your husband talk about work at home?
Yes, he does. Um, to like to an extent, it'll be like, oh, I had a really hard call or I was dealing with this or whatever. Sometimes with the kids, sometimes just with me.
Hmm.
Um, Sometimes, especially that middle one, will overhear it and I'm like, what, where, why?
Us middle ones, we're sneaky.
Yes. I'm like, where'd that come from? How'd you even hear that? You know?
Real conversations my parents have had.
Yeah. Um, but it's always done like tactfully and it's always done like he shelters them enough for
Yeah.
their ages. But also like especially with certain things like when the anniversary, I don't, would you call it an anniversary? When the year mark hit after his shooting, we decided to get out of town and go do something fun and celebrate the kids and how well they struggled through this year or
Hmm.
that year. And we wanted to honor that. And so we were like, let's go make fun memories today and not let today be a doom and gloom day. Um, and my husband woke up very cranky and short fused, rightfully so. Anticipate that, right? But then was like really short fused with um the middle kiddo. And I was like, why don't you explain to him why you maybe need him to be a little bit more adaptable today, or why you maybe need some obedience the first time more than usual, kind of thing, and explain to him the why, because I guarantee you he doesn't remember that this day a year ago you were
Yeah,
involved in your shooting.
right.
Like,
100%.
he's not going to know that. And so he sat him down and was like, hey, can I explain why I'm a little bit more irritable today? And then the kid, like, our kid was amazing. Our kids were amazing the whole time we were away. No fighting, no whining, because there was that element of understanding. Oh,
Mhm.
I understand why you're feeling the way that you're feeling,
Yeah,
or like he can't do fireworks.
right.
He doesn't
Why
do
the vibe
fireworks.
is the
Yeah.
way it is.
Yeah, why don't you like fireworks? And then that's when they're starting to learn a little bit more about like what happened during the riots, and oh, that's why you don't like fireworks. That makes complete sense to me.
Yes,
Like,
all the dots are connecting.
yeah. So I think that that helps them, right? It only helps
Mhm.
them have some more understanding and that helps build that culture in our house that is more peaceful
Yeah.
than why is dad, and I think it helps his relationship with them, right? Like instead of, oh, my dad is always cranky when he comes home
Yes.
from work,
Yes.
instead it's like, oh, I know dad is cranky because this
Hmm.
is happening. So it builds that layer of understanding for them too, which I think is only makes them better people as they grow up, right? And into the world because they can be a lot more understanding and empathetic to people they encounter. So,
100%. I want to talk about your book, but really quickly, you had mentioned that your oldest daughter does not have social media. And you also mentioned that she's 15.
almost 15.
So how in the heck do you navigate that? Because I think this is really interesting. Again, I don't have kids. The idea of social media for my kids is like 100% no, but I can't
Hmm.
speak from experience. I don't actually know what I'm talking about. I just know that like I live in a dream world where any potential kids I have will not have social media.
Right.
Um, but uh, yeah, I also know many people whose kids are on social media
Hmm.
in second grade.
Right.
So like How have you sort of been able, and I have a feeling it's going to kind of come down to what we're talking about when it comes to like communication and understanding and
Mhm.
all of the things, but how have you been able to navigate that with her and help her understand? And has she like had her moments where she's like, give me social media?
Yeah, but not too many of the moments, thankfully. Again, she's probably anomaly for most teens.
Fair. Okay.
Like people are like, "Oh, you have a teenage daughter? Ugh, how's that?" And I'm like, "Fantastic. I have zero complaints. She's amazing." Like
Amazing.
she is absolutely amazing. But I think there's times, right, where she's like, "Hey, can I have Snapchat?" No. Why? And we'll give out our whys. And I
Okay.
think it's that under explaining makes all the difference, the why. So I think that's true for all of us, right? When we understand a why, it makes it a whole lot easier to accept. And so dad is very much like, no. And here's why. And
Hmm.
here's what I deal with when it comes to things like Snapchat. And it is a piece to protect you. And I think, and we ask her all the time. Well, not all the time. She doesn't ask too much, honestly, which I'm grateful for. But like, there's times and there's things that we have to like, we'll navigate. Like, just recently, we let her get CapCut, which we were a little like, I don't know. Like, it's still very much social media type. You can talk to people, but it
I
was
didn't know
like,
that.
yeah. And people like, and so we were like, let's just, and like anybody can see videos she makes. And I'm like, that to me is a little on the line, but we did research and we had conversations with her about how to do that safely. And
Hmm.
then we've let her have it and it's been fine. She really just likes to make videos like video edits that she sends with her friends, like shares with her friends, and that's it.
Hmm.
And I think we figured out a way to maybe hide that from the outside world. I'm assuming my husband did because that's his thing. And so I think that that makes a huge difference,
Yeah.
in how we navigate that. And she has not asked very often.
Hmm.
Every once in a while, she might mention, like, hey, can I have Instagram? And we're like, why? Why do you want it? And like, if she could come back and justify that with a lot of depth as to why she'd want that, we'd probably consider it. Like there's been
Hmm.
times where she's like, "Can I watch this R-rated movie?" And I'm like, "Go write a persuasive essay on why I should let you watch that R-rated movie and we'll consider." And she'll do it and bring it back and we're like, "Valid points. Yes, you may watch that movie."
There
Um,
you go. It's about like the give and take, I guess, too.
yeah.
Like you can't have Instagram, but you can have CapCut.
hmm Yeah. And I think and it's yeah, it's the conversations and we don't shelter either. Like we're not the family that like until you're 13 you do not watch PG-13 movie. Like I have friends who are like that and that works for them. For us, I'm
Mhm.
like it's about your level of maturity, your level of understanding. And if we think that you can handle the content in that
Right.
TV show or movie.
Right.
Um like our middle kiddo is 11, but he'll watch war movies. Some of those are rated R
Hmm.
for the gore, but he is a huge history kid. Loves history, loves war movies, wants to be in the Navy. So it's like he can handle the content. So we're like,
Exactly.
yes,
Yeah.
you can watch that movie,
Right.
but no, your 6-year-old brother cannot.
Mhm.
And so yeah, it's that give and take and it's the conversations, and understanding why. And some of the why is protection, right? Like her dad is a cop. He sees things in the world that other parents don't, and we explain, like she'd be like, well, so and so has TikTok, like I should be allowed to have TikTok. And I'm like, no. And what so and so's family does is not what we do. I'm not their mom, and
Yeah.
the biggest thing I tell her and all of our kids is like, I get one shot to do this right.
Right.
and I'm not going to waste my one shot on TikTok. So, no, it's a non-negotiable. You're not having TikTok. When you're 18, you can have all the social media you want.
Hmm.
Until then, the answer is no. And here's why, you know, or we'll
Yeah.
talk about that later. You know,
Hmm.
I'm not saying she'll be 18 before she has any social media. That I don't know. I take it moment by moment,
Take
just
it as it
like,
comes.
yeah, just like dating. She's like, what age do I have to be? And I'm like, there's no age for dating. It's when you're ready, when you can tell me what it means to have a boyfriend, why you want a boyfriend, like,
Yeah.
then we'll talk about it. But until then, I
No,
don't see the point in
there's no
dating.
reason. Yeah. Yeah.
You can't even drive yourself to the date. So,
Very, very, all very valid. I love that. Um, yeah, I love that. So I want to talk about your book real quick. So first and foremost, what inspired you to write your book, which again is called Silent Warriors, The Guardians Behind the Badge?
yeah, well, I've dreamed of being a writer since I was 5.
Oh,
So,
wow. I didn't know
yes,
that. Well, in that case,
yes,
huge congratulations, even
thanks.
more than I've already given you, because that's
And
really cool.
my littlest one always asks the question, like, what did you want to be when you grow up? Or grew up or
Ah.
whatever. And I'm like, a writer. And he's always like, you should do that, Mom. And I'm like, you're right,
Aw,
I
he's
should
so
do
proud of
that.
you.
He is all the time. And the other day he goes, Mom, are you gonna write your second book this year? And I
Oh.
was like, I don't know, buddy. Let's let's
Chill out.
just yeah. I had people asking before book one was even out to the world.
Mhm.
So, book two? And I'm like, whoa, can I birth book one first
Seriously.
before you're asking me to do another?
Oh my gosh.
But I think like I've had things in my life, traumas, all the things, right, that I could write about, and it could make a good book, sure. But I wanted my like I am all about like my words, I want them to have a purpose and a
Mm,
meaning. Like anything I put on social media, like I that's coming from my heart. Like I want it to be a purposeful and not just like something random. And so after the shooting, that was the fourth critical incident in like the span of 4 months.
wow.
So the first three were stacked in this fall, and then that one happened in January. And it was, and in the fall, it was, or no, yeah, so there was those, then the shooting. And I think I was just like, ugh, like overwhelmed and had all these emotions that I was trying to work through. And I
Yeah.
remember calling up my good friend and I said, I kind of want, like, I wish I had a manual. I wish I had a manual on how to navigate this world, but it doesn't exist because one, there is no manual, right? It is case by case. And like even sitting like in the last shooting for my husband's department with those spouses, so there was a couple of spouses involved or
Mhm.
officers, like their husbands were on the same call, both fired their weapons, and yet they both have extremely
Right.
different experiences of what just happened.
Yep.
And so there is no manual. And that's not what the book is, right? It's not a manual. But I was like, I just wish there was something. And she talked about when she had a miscarriage, the thing that helped her more than anything was picking up somebody's story and
Mm,
reading it. And she was like, I felt so much less alone reading somebody's experience. And it was the most healing thing compared to therapy and all the other things she had done, and even talking. And I was like, no, I can understand that piece.
mhm,
And so I was like, I'm gonna write my story so that at least one less spouse feels less alone
mhm,
in what they're walking through, whether it's the critical or just the day-to-day experiences. And I think that there was so much that I never shared along the way. And in this last decade or so, because nobody talks about it. Nobody talks
mhm.
about the struggles. And so then I was like, well, maybe I'm just not cut out for this lifestyle. Maybe there's something wrong with me because I'm having some fear today, or I'm feeling resentful for the job and what it takes. Um, but really, that's not the case. And I'm hearing that more and more, especially now that it's out there and people are giving feedback. Like just somebody the other day was like, I wish I had this book when I was in the thick of it. I was a spouse for 25 years, and I wish I would have had these words. But even now, they validate my experience.
Mhm.
And so that was the why, really, was how do I, like, I wanted whatever book I put out into the world, I wanted it to have a purpose.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
and it
so
does.
this was the book and this was the purpose, and it flowed. And it was also extremely therapeutic for me.
Oh, good.
That was kind of how I processed through
Mm-hmm.
all of
Yeah.
it. And it was
Yeah.
like not even just police life, right? Like our personal lives outside of that were hard.
Mm-hmm.
Like I ended up with a autoimmune diagnosis after the shooting, and my body had tanked from the stress. And I didn't realize I was like that stressed until my body just couldn't recover.
Yeah.
And then realized, oh, well, it's because there's an underlying autoimmune disease. A kid was in the PICU and super sick for a week. Um, and kids had broken bones and financial stress and,
Life was
life.
lifing.
Yeah, life didn't stop just because we experienced all these traumas, and then my husband lost partial hearing after
Mhm.
the shooting and another SWAT call out, and got T-boned and totaled his truck while at work. And so then we had to buy a new car in the process. And
Jeez. And so you had
so
an outlet.
yeah, so this was really
Mm.
a piece for me to just almost do my own therapy in the
Yeah.
way of writing. So,
Yeah, I love that. One thing I wanted to ask you about that you mentioned in the book is, a lot of people showed up for you, but it was a lot of like, what do you need? Or,
mhm,
these sort of open-ended questions, or people even like didn't show up because maybe they didn't know how to show up. So
mhm.
I would love to just kind of hear your perspective. Like, what would have been a better question beyond, what do you need? Or maybe it's not a matter of a question. I know you mentioned in the book, like just showing up, making some, knocking on the door, coffee, like
Mhm.
whatever. But also, I think it's very common for people to not show up because they don't know how. And so, like, they sort of in their own right, like, shut down or don't
Mhm.
reach out because they don't know what to do or what to say. So, I'm curious, what would you say to someone who wants to show up but just doesn't know how?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is like just do the thing. Whatever the thing is that you're thinking about, or what would be like internally looking, like what would be the most helpful thing for me in a situation.
Hmm.
I'm gonna do that, and I think like it was my dear, dear friend, like that morning text, like she was up with me most of the night. It was about 36 hours before I actually got to go to sleep. Um, and so, but she was up with me the night before, throughout the night, and reaching out. And then the next morning texted me really early and was like, breakfast is on the doorstep for the kids. She was like, don't worry about breakfast. I'll be back later with dinner that's nourishing to your body. And it was like not just fast food or
Hmm.
whatever,
Hmm.
like she was intentional with what she made, right? She was like, nourishing our bodies is the most important thing. Like, this is healthy. This is like all the things you would normally eat, your grass-fed beef, like went over the top. And she was like, that's all I know how to do. That's how I know how to show up
Right.
for you today. And I'm like, I didn't even know that I needed that until you did it. So thank you. I wasn't even thinking about what I was going to feed my kids for
Nourishing.
breakfast
Yeah.
or what I was going to feed them for dinner. I would probably have ordered them pizza because I didn't have the capacity to do anything else, right? And instead, she was like, "Here's a really healthy meal."
Mhm.
Um, but I appreciated the people who didn't ask, what do you need? Because I think so often we don't know what we need.
Right.
Um, in general, but especially when we're in the thick of a a trauma.
Yeah.
And so it was the people who asked, how can I hold space for you today?
Hmm.
Or how can I show up for you today? And like one friend asked, like, how can I show up for you today? And I was like, can we go move our bodies? Like, I need a walk and I need one of your therapeutic hugs. I'm not a hugger, but there's some people that I'm like, your hug is like medicine to my soul. I need that today. And so she was like, absolutely. I'll meet you at our spot. Perfect. Thank you. And so it was
Mhm.
like, but she gave me the freedom to say, this is how you could show up for me today.
Right.
Versus like, what do you need?
Yeah.
Uh, I don't know.
I don't know. Yeah.
I don't know. And
Yeah.
I think that those phrasing the question like that, it's pretty similar in a sense to like, what do I
Hmm.
need? But I think the way it's phrased makes it sound
Matters. Yeah.
like you actually care
Hmm.
about what I do need and how you can show up
Right.
for me.
Right.
Um, and so yeah, that and this the people who just just did what they felt like they could do.
So I also want to know, like, because I feel like people don't think about this. I mean, we understand, like, if there's a critical incident, if there's a shooting, whatever, we're probably going to go through it mentally, emotionally, all the things. But I was wondering, like, how did you, and I mentioned this earlier, I put a pin in it. How did you logistically figure out how to navigate things? Like, were there resources where it's like, okay, do I need a lawyer? Like, who do I ask? What happens next? Like, can he go back to work? When does he go back to work? Like, can I go to work? Like these questions
Hmm.
that you don't necessarily think about, even if you're thinking like hypothetically, this might happen someday, you're likely going to go to, oh my God, how will I support him? How will I support myself, my kids? Like, where will we get the help that we need? But you
Hmm.
don't really think about the logistics.
Right.
So I was thinking like maybe it's the FOP or the FOP auxiliary if you have one, or maybe like nonprofits. But how did you guys kind of navigate that, and what resources did you utilize, if any?
Yeah, so that night, because we pay for the FOP, pay into it, not
Hmm.
every officer does. Like they have an
Hmm.
option. So we pay into the FOP, which I'm really like before I'm like, why do we pay into this? And I'm like, oh, this is why we
Got it.
pay
I
into
understand.
that. Got it. Keep doing that. Give them all of our money.
Yeah.
Um, so they had them show up that night. So they show up, like he says, "Hey, can you um call the FOP lawyer?" And so
I see.
the lawyer was already there when I got there. So they have all like he's already ran through everything with him and
Hmm.
then gave me like he kind of gave me the rundown of like, okay, here's kind of the next steps. Here's what to look forward to,
Right.
like here's
Right.
what's to come.
What to expect. Yeah.
Yeah. And so he kind of walked me through that. I was able to ask a few more of like the specific questions, as far as like, what does that look like? Is he off for an extended period of time? Is he gonna be, do we have an idea of when he's going back to work? Do we have to stay in the state? Like, what if he needs to get
Hmm.
away? Like
Right.
my family
Exactly.
has property in Wisconsin that's quiet. And I was like, maybe like if he needs to get away to the quiet, can we do that?
Hmm. Yeah.
Um, and so he was great. Like the FOP lawyer was fantastic. He let me ask all the questions. And then obviously there were more to come. And he was the one who was like, okay, stay off all social media.
Hmm.
Tell your family to do the same and tell everybody that if they do feel the need to be on social media looking at things, that they need to refrain from commenting because those things could hinder
Yeah.
him
Right.
if there is a lawsuit. And so he was really helpful with that, which was fantastic.
Okay.
Since then, the department has done it very differently too. just because they learned a lot. My
Hmm.
husband was the first officer involved shooting for their department in 9 years.
Wow.
So that made a huge difference, right? Like it's a new chief, it's a lot of new staff, like nobody's
Hmm.
really walked through this. And so it was really helpful for or so they didn't really know, they weren't prepared. And so they learned a lot through our story and our situation and have asked a lot of questions like, how could we have done this better? How could we show up differently for this? And so now they actually have like a packet that they take
Okay.
to the
Very cool.
officers and the peer support member walks through that with them. Here's all the what to expects.
A manual for
Yeah.
the logistic piece.
Yes, which is extremely helpful. And then I was like, where's that for the spouses? Like they called me for peer support for the last one, and I was like, my husband was peer support for the officer, and I was for the spouses. And I was like, you have a packet? And I was like, yeah. And I was like, what? Where was my packet? Because there's so much information and so many
Yeah.
resources. But all of those, like, if they shared any with me that night, they went out one
Right.
ear, out the
Yeah.
other. Like, I don't
Yeah.
remember any of them. And then as far as like other resources, I mean, we found ways to find community and ways to walk through that. So like Revital is a big one. Like we attended outings with Revital individually where we could just get out and do something. Like my husband
Hmm.
is very creative and hands-on, and he went and made like a challenge coin board, like just
Oh,
because
that's
he
cool.
needed to do something that wasn't in the house, but was with people who kind of understood his lifestyle, right? Without ever
Hmm.
having to talk. You know, I
Yeah.
did the same paddle boarding, some craft outings, like simple things with people that I didn't have to tell them anything,
Hmm.
but they understood the struggles. And then I
Right.
built some friendships through those as well. Um, so yeah.
Amazing. And then, okay, we mentioned Revital. So before we hop off, I want you to share a little bit about Revital and what you do with them.
Yeah, so they're a nonprofit here in Colorado that supports the front line. Um, and so they do that in different ways. A lot of them are outings that they will pay for. And then they also will provide treatment for people who have substance abuse. Like they will get
Hmm.
them where they need to be. They will pay for counseling if that's a hardship. There's financial resources that they can give to people who are struggling. And then um, I help with it's kind of a newer thing now, but it's called Revitalizing Guardians within Revital, but it's all for the spouses. So it's supporting the spouses. So we're starting this month with Zoom calls where there's actual training. So we'll take them
That's
through
awesome.
specific things that they have talked about needing. So, like resource wise, like stress management or how to have conversations with kids or whatever the case may be.
Hmm.
And so we have that all lined up, and we'll do that once a month via Zoom so that any of the spouses can attend um, across all of Colorado. Because we have some who drive
Wow.
an hour and a half, 2 hours to come to an outing because they need that. And
Right.
so this gives them a chance to do that from home. And then once a month, we will meet in person to dive deeper into the content that we talked about, to create that community too. And the hope is that we're helping them build community and support within the law enforcement community because so
Hmm.
many have talked about needing that. Like I just need a community of people who understand. Um, and so that's our hope is that we can create the space for them that maybe in turn they go and build that, whether that's within their department or within their community where they live. So if they live 2 hours north, like they can build that community in their like build a community within their
They can
community.
like carry it forward or
Yeah.
pay it forward.
Yeah, because I think, and the biggest thing is like empowering them to do that. I think that there's this kind of this stigma within probably first responder community that it's almost like this, like, you do it for me kind of thing versus
Mm,
like you create the thing and I just like show up and I'm not going to do anything else with that versus empowering them to go and do what they need to do to take care of themselves.
right, right.
Like we're not here to like spoon feed you, like we
Hmm.
will give you the resources, we will equip you, and then it's up to you to go out and choose how you do that. And if you need the help, you ask for the help, versus being forced to do that. Um, and so, yeah, that's the goal is to just empower spouses to remember who they are outside of being a first responder spouse. And Revital works with all first responders, so it's not just law
Right.
enforcement. But remembering who you are as a person, you're taking care of yourselves because if we don't take care of ourselves, we can't hold space when our first responder comes home
Yeah,
and
right.
they need us to hold that, learning those boundaries and those conversations to have and ways that we can be proactive rather than reactive, like every year my husband comes home with his just in case paperwork that we have to fill out and I'm like, ugh, every year the dreaded paperwork, but then I'm like, but I also am appreciative because if that becomes our story, I don't have to plan your funeral in
Hmm.
the depth of grief. It's already
Yeah.
done,
Hmm.
and so I appreciate the proactiveness there.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
100%. And this is actually the second time I've mentioned, or my guest has mentioned Revital on the show because I had Will Be Inspired on, and he keeps coming up too. I had him on a few months ago, and he has a nonprofit in Missouri where his organization pays for first responders and veterans to get gym memberships and blood work and, take care of themselves. But he's friends with the founders of Revital, and they were sort of like mentors in his process of creating what he has today.
mhm,
So we actually talked about them at length on the episode where I interviewed him.
mhm.
So fantastic organization.
Yeah, they're
Shout
doing
out
some
to
really
Revital.
yes, they're doing some really awesome work within the first responder community in Colorado. And what I love is that their focus isn't only on the first responder, but also their families.
Right. Yeah,
The spouses, they have outings for kids. Like they sponsored
I
a
love
couple
that.
of spots for kids to do some equine stuff this summer. And my middle kid got to do that. And it was
Oh,
like
that's cool.
so
Really
healing
cool.
and wonderful for him, like resources that we might not have gotten to do otherwise. Like my
Hmm.
husband did not get into this profession for money, that's for sure.
Right.
So, like when we have resources that can help cover some of that, that's extremely helpful,
Yeah.
and they're getting what they need.
Hmm.
Um, and so, and I love it. Like this weekend, I'm hosting a yoga event for spouses,
I love that.
with them. And so it's just like these alternatives to just therapy,
Hmm.
where they can come and do something that's a different form of therapy and start to build some friendships and community with like-minded people who understand their situation a bit more. So,
I love that. Amazing. Well, where can people find you? I think you have a social media presence now, a public one. Where can they
yes.
find you and your book?
Yeah, so the book is on Amazon. Um,
Amazing.
they can also Instagram, it's Toni Lynn Official. And then I also have the website, tony-lynn.com.
Amazing. And that will obviously all be in the show notes. This was amazing. We obviously can just talk and talk and talk and keep going.
Yes.
Before we do jump, do you have anything else that you want to add that we didn't get to that you want to share?
I don't think so.
Okay,
I mean, I'm
we
sure
covered a
there's a
lot of
million things
ground.
we could
Yeah, I
still talk
mean,
about, but
yeah, 100%. But this was awesome. I really appreciate you sharing. Go get the book, Silent Warriors, The Guardians Behind the Badge. And thank you again for being on. You're all
thank you for
amazing.
having me.
And I love everything that you're doing.
Thank you.